Good morning and welcome back to Spidz YouTube. We're going to go over our CDS Season 2 Week 7 games versus Sirturmund. If you're unfamiliar with the CDS is, it's the Champion Draft Series. We drafted our champions 8 weeks ago now, and they're the only champions we're allowed to use in our lineups. My team, the Redeemed Qualities, has got Gwen, Leona, Draven, Nila, Kennen, Lucian, Sejuani, Kaisar, Gangplank at the Poro King. Boom, first try. The Empire's Gladiators have got Aphelios, Volibear, Ezreal, Twisted Fate, Veigar, Eve, Maokai, Kayle, and Vladimir. They've got a very interesting lineup. Previously, they were trying to go for triple Targon, but they had Diana instead of Volibear when they originally did this draft. And they had Aphelios, Diana, and Kayle, and that's what they were going for. Since the Cosmic Hole nerf, they have changed how they're trying to win things quite a little bit. If you look what they previously brought, they brought a lot of like Maokai, Evelynn, and Ezreal, Twisted Fate, and Veigar, Vladimir. Ezreal, Twisted Fate is a lot like TF Nilla. It's just running Sunken Temple. It's just trying to do, normal Bilgewater PNZ stuff. And then Veigar Vladimir is Tree. It's Bandle Tree. You're using like typical like old Bandle Tree. It's going Noxus to try and get things like Flock, and I don't think it's on House Spider, but they just wanted Flock basically, and that's why they're in Noxus, right? As you can see, they brought this quite a bit. They did change their lineup a little bit last week, probably trying to be less predictable by bringing Targon PNZ control, think like a Ballistic Bot control deck, as well as Tia Veigar, which was Go Hard. I quite like Sirturmund's lineup, and going into this, I really wanted to make sure that we're really, really good into Mill, and if we can manage it, try and be good into Tree and Temple Twisted Fate, right? To be good into those, the instinct is to try and be really good into landmarks, right? So being able to take out the Sunken Temple or take out the Bandle Tree, as well as for Temple TF, you want to still make sure you're able to interact with their pieces such as Ezreal and Twisted Fate, right? So having things like Electro Harpoon for Twisted Fate seems pretty important, right? Some of the worries were like if they changed drastically into something like a Volibear deck or a Scargrounds deck. Another worry would be baiting myself into playing what I want to play as opposed to what's good deck building. But let's start with analyzing how this Mill deck works. It looks rather innocuous, right? It looks just like a regular Mill deck, but trying to prepare when you know someone's going to bring Mill and try and beat Mill is a very weird thing to try and do. You might say instinctually, like, just play a good, aggressive, mid-rangey deck that will have big enough units such that Evelynn Maokai doesn't do well into you. Evelynn's like a 6/6 often, or like a 5/6, and Deadbloom Wanderer and Vora and Sea Scarab aren't insignificant units to attack into. And Soul Harvest and Undergrowth are very concerning pieces. If you want me to play something like Pirates or Sunburn, like Draven Leona, or even like Red Gwen, it's not as favored as it seems, especially because in LoR, you have the attack token and the defense token cycle, right? On their defensive turn, they can do quite a lot of things that prepare them for my offensive turn, right? Deadbloom Wanderer and Maokai are really good plays on a defensive turn because Maokai on a defensive turn means that either one, with a Vile Piece, they can get a sapling and trade into my stuff. Or two, it prevents me from developing a unit for my attack on my attack turn, because them developing a unit gives them 2 actions. So unless I'm also doing something that gives me 2 actions, like a Leona, they are getting better. And if I do something like a Leona, it is equidistant. I'm not actually gaining what makes Leona so powerful, and that she's a 2-unit develop in 1 action, right? Because she stuns on play and then she gets her unit herself, right? A lot of the decks that I like playing that are these very tempo-aggressive decks, like Red Gwen, like Sunburn, right? They try and, 1, have very positive trades into their units via using either Quick Attack or Challenger plus Barrier, or having big units like Sun Guardian, such that their board is dwindled and our board is embiggened, right? It also tries to play for doing 2 units in 1 action, and thus being able to go wide rather effectively, right? These are your Redeemed Prodigies, your Arachnoid Sentries, your Leonas, your Sunhawks, right? If they can respond to that really effectively with a Deadbloom Wanderer, which is a premium unit against aggro, or Maokai, or Vile Piece, or getting Evelynn to become a 5/6 by developing a unit, which is kind of the same thing as developing 2 units in 1 action, makes it really, really difficult to attack into. And their open attack preventing cards like Hate Spike and Vile Piece and Undergrowth and Vengeance are pretty significant, right? You get quite forked by this deck. So if you wanted to be a mega favorite into Evelynn Maokai, going for these like aggro mid-range decks isn't actually the line, right? You really want to go for something that more targets on what Evelynn Maokai is trying to do in a lineup. Evelynn Maokai, as with every other Sirturmund deck, is trying to be an anti-control deck, right? Tree and Temple are the same thing, right? They control the board, right, with things, as we talked about with Evelynn Maokai, but also with things like Flock or PNZ removal. But they want to beat control by having a really awkward win con, right? Landmark and Tree, Mill in this, and sort of Landmark or Ezreal or Twisted Fate, all these like high value engines or instant OTK cards in that deck, right? So as long as I don't play control, and instead I find the way to beat control, which is to run like an uninteractive combo deck like Shellfolk or something, that is what I want to go for. Now, Shellfolk isn't really the line this week, I don't think. I think I've had my fill with Shellfolk, and when you don't draw it, it's not very good. And any deck that has units they can develop, like Deadbloom Wanderer or Sea Scarab, will beat Shellfolk, right? Because I don't have PNZ. I can't run PNZ Shellfolk. That should be something I probably should fix, right? Vi is still available, and she's pretty good. So I might try and grab her up, and we'll talk more about that in a couple of minutes. But the way to beat a deck like Evelyn Maokai is to have some sort of silly combo. And so, introduction to the first silly combo is Kennen Gangplank. This is Wizen Helmsman plus Deluge plus Lightning Rush. This is a deck with Nilla as opposed to Gangplank that I've been playing quite a bit on ladder. It felt not bad, right? Like, you copy the Wizen Helmsman with either Condense or the free Lightning Rush that you get from the Wizen Helmsman. Deluge buffs Lightning Rush because it's an elemental skill. And you also have Ebb and Tidal Invocation as interaction pieces. You got a bunch of other support cards that are trying to save you through this. This deck is actually really fun and surprisingly good into control decks, right? This was really good into Volibear decks that I was fighting on ladder and so forth. And it was doing really, really well into Mill. Especially with Tidal Wave, which is a card that says if they want to watery grave you, you can just play Wizen Helmsman if you've already played a Tidal Wave, or just have Tidal Wave in hand, and then it shuffles in a Crashing Wave into your deck, right? What Tidal Wave allows you to do is have a silly card for when Maokai does flip, if they have a turbo flip, while also being able to interact with the board a non-insignificant amount, and also do rather powerful things. The win con of this deck is trying to do Lightning Rush and Helmsman about 2 or 3 times. It'll deal 5, 6, 7 damage with your Deluges, and it just becomes a rather powerful house. This deck is a little bit weird. You would expect cards like Pytos or Group Shot in this deck to try and interact with the board a little bit better, and I can see you wanting that, but this is where we sort of landed on. You'll see why I'm on Gangplank when you look at the next deck, which is another Bilgewater Wizen Helmsman Deluge deck, right? I wanted this deck to be on Nilla and the other deck to be on Gangplank because Legionary Charge was a really, really, really good way to tutor Wizen Helmsman. And that way I had to move the champions around. It felt a little bit bad because the Kennen deck really wanted Nilla. If you look at this deck and... If you look at this deck and add Nilla to it, I think it looks a lot better than if you add Gangplank to it. But Nilla really needed to be in this deck for the Legionary Charge stuff, and we still need Nilla for the Bilgewater access. I think everything else in this deck sort of makes sense. Wildfire does the same thing as Tidal Wave, but also does the same thing as Lightning Rush, which makes this deck really, really interesting. You'll notice between these two decks, there are 5 copies of Landmark Removal, 2 Portal Pioneers, and 3 Bandle Tellstones in that, and in this version, 3 Armed Acquisitioner, 2 Scorched Death. I wanted 5 Landmark Removal because what happened with Crims against Roma is that sometimes they would draw 2 Bandle Trees and I would only draw 1 Landmark Removal and they would just win off that. So I wanted to avoid that possibility. And Scorched Earth and Armed Acquisitioner, their second forms are not the worst thing in the world, right? Last deck to fill this out was going to be Gwen Sejuani. I can't bring a third Deluge deck because I only have 2 Bilgewater champions, so I can only bring 2 Bilgewater decks. And this was an interesting way of trying to deal with the issue I pointed out with Mill by saying that I needed to sort of have ways of beating the fact that they would match me on board, right? And having Overwhelm and specifically like Battle Fury and Ancient Yeti and a bunch of buffs, right? If this deck could run Yudilski Snowdog, it would, right? But it's not out yet when this tournament happened. Or this round of the tournament happened, I would have played it. But you can see the point of this deck. It is trying to do what the other decks couldn't do in having Overwhelm threats. Another option would have been the Poro King, but I think the Poro King also suffers at the same stuff that Sunburn does when trying to fight Maokai Mill. The point of this lineup was to be triple favored into Maokai Mill and try and do as best as it can into the other landmark decks. These 2 decks were extremely favored into Mill, right? Just, they can't interact with Wizen Helmsman trying to combo off, and then they even had answers for Watery Grave stuff in things like Wildfire and Tidal Wave, right? And this deck felt okay, but it didn't feel amazing into the landmark destruction stuff. Or rather, it didn't feel amazing into Tree or into TF Ezreal. And the main issues were just that, like, the way a deck like this is the Tree deck that he was bringing. Sirturmund ended up bringing and also was bringing something very similar every week. This looks like it has no alt win cons outside of Tree, right? It's not on Poppy, it's not on, like, Ziggs, it can't really be that aggressive. It's very, very, very control focused. But if you look at my decks, I actually don't have an answer for Vladimir. If he comes down as a 5-mana 6/6 fearsome regen, deal some burn, I just like lose. I can't actually kill Vladimir. And so while I was killing the Bandle tree and being able to destroy it really effectively with my interaction for landmarks, if Roma just played for Vladimir after about turn 6 or turn 7, with things like Bandle City Mare that have rather high health in units, and Aloof Travelers sometimes getting rid of my Wizened Helmsman, which slows down my combo a little bit, it was actually not a great time for me. And this was a really bad... I did a bunch of scrims, but it was really, really bad to learn in the tournament against Sirturmund that Bandle Tree costs 3 mana, not 4. Roma only ever played the Bandle Tree after turn 3 because he would play Mare on 3 and then do Bandle Tree on turn 4. So I kind of forgot that Bandle Tree was buffed to 3 mana. You would think I would click on the card and look at the mana, but it didn't come into my brain because it seemed so irrelevant what Bandle Tree's cost was because I just wanted to beat it as an interaction piece. But the cost is really, really important. 4. When I inevitably try and deal with it with Armed Acquisitioner plus Landmark Destruction costs 4 mana. Scorched Earth costs 3 mana. Bandle Tillstones costs, I think, 5 mana, because I think they buffed the card to cost 4 mana, the one that destroys landmarks. And Portal Pioneer costs 3 mana, right? I used to think that most of these were mana positive or mana equal, right? Like Armed Acquisitioner. Only Bandle Tillstones I thought was mana negative. Turns out that everything is mana equal or mana negative, and that was not... it's a big difference not being mana positive as opposed to mana equal. So that was very disappointing for me to learn. Their second deck, Ezreal Twisted Fate, which they also ended up bringing. I was able to kill Twisted Fate really easily with things like the Lightning Rush, with things like the Drop the Bomb. Not the Drop the Bomb, sorry, the Electro Harpoon from the Bandle Tillstones, right? There are a lot of things that I'm able to deal with this deck, but Ruined Rex either does 6 damage to my Nexus or levels Ezreal. It's one of the two. And if it's 6 damage to the Nexus, I then have to worry about killing Ruined Rex and killing Ezreal as just a 1-3, and killing Mayim, which is something that my decks can't really effectively do, because Deluge plus Tidal Wave only does 2 damage, right? I don't really have good 3 damage interaction, right? And so while I could deal with, like, their main combo pieces, they would just play for a bunch of scraps and win. What this ended up meaning is that both of these decks were actually favored into me by, like, 5%. I think they're, like, 45-55 matchups. But, you know, provided they bring Mill, I'll have a good time. Anyway. They didn't. Here's their Maokai deck. They didn't end up bringing Mill, they ended up bringing Endure, and this went from, like, a really, like, good situation to a bad situation, right? I thought I was triple favored into the lineup because I could just target Maokai Mill, right? And then it turns out that they don't bring it, and then I'm going to lose because they just didn't bring what I needed to, right? Some spoilers, because the games, you're going to see the games in a couple of seconds. We do get 2-0'd. We end up banning Maokai Volibear, and then these decks are just good enough to beat me by playing for things like Vladimir, or like Ezreal without Twisted Fate, right? That's just what ended up being the case, right? You can say that these decks were, like, I can look at these decks and I can tell you they're bad Spidz. You don't need a, you know, a degree to work that out. But if they had brought Mill, this would have felt like an amazing lineup, and I, 1, get to play what I wanted to play, and 2, had a lot of fun with it, right? And these elemental decks are really, really fun. Like, on ladder, these are thoroughly enjoyable decks to play. But unfortunately, I baited myself into playing what I wanted to play as opposed to deck building well. If you look at how Cephalopod went against Sirturmund, because I'm pretty sure they've played. I'm scared I'm confusing this with Margin B. But basically, just played linearly strong things and then tried to target this anyway, right? I think he did play Ari Kindred, which was a little bit awkward, but that's basically what Cephalopod was trying to do. And I didn't go for that, and I lost, right? This is also the second time in a row that my enemy gamer has done a last-minute pivot away, and it's caused me a loss, right? So Sirturmund told me that he was originally going to bring Mill, and then at the last minute decided to change into the Maokai Volibear, in the same way that Cephalopod did a last-minute change from Invoke's post-Cosmic Call nerf into Jackset, and we also lost that. We are currently 6th on the standings, as opposed to 2nd, where we were last week, and only the top 6 make it in, which means that if we lose both of our next games, we're probably not making it. If we lose one of our next games, we also might not make it. We can guaranteedly be in if we win both of our next games, but it's not an easy thing to do, especially with some of the things I'm about to mention in a second. Last thing I quickly want to mention about these deck lists is why I am on Aloof in this deck. This was a last-minute change, but it was trying to hit very specifically Vladimir in the tree deck, which is a weird thing to be thinking about, but that's why we had it. Now, sometimes it hits Minimorph, which is a little bit sad, but the aim was to try and hit Vladimir, and sometimes hit their Aloof before they hit ours. that was the lineup. Before we get into the games, there's some Spidz updates. This week actually had higher stakes than most weeks because the way Pink Ghost wanted to make accessing the new champions like fair, which it is fair. I'm putting it in quotes, but it's fair by making it unfair, right? Because you have to have some unfairness in it somehow. There's always trade-offs in these sorts of things. The better you do this week, the earlier you get access to the new champions, right? So there are higher stakes this week. So if I 2-0'd, I may have had access to Morgana and Mordekaiser and Elder Dragon. Instead, I got 2-0'd, so I've got like penultimate access to those cards, while Cephalopod and Sirturmund, who did 2-0, have like first billing for those champions. I'm probably not getting Morgana or Mordekaiser, even though they're really cool champions. I would have in a heartbeat gotten rid of Leona for Morgana, and I would have gotten rid of Draven for Mordekaiser. They're definitely up my alley, and I really value the region combinations, so it would have been quite nice. But I'm probably not going to get them. It does mean that some champions will be added to the pool when inevitably some of these champions get traded around, so we could look for that, and I could be looking for Vi. Because she's currently in the pool. I think this is like, if I'm ever going to change my champions, it should probably be around now, especially prepping for the finals if I do make it, right? And I definitely think that if I had PNZ this week, I might have done a little bit better, because I think PNZ would have been much better than, like, Bandle City for one of the elemental decks, right? Like, if I could do Nilla Vi or Gangplank Vi, that would have been better than Kennen Vi, I think. Or Kennen Gangplank. I'll be casting Worlds next week, which is very, very, very exciting. You might notice that I'm a little bit tired this week. I've always got dark circles under my eyes, but I'm even more tired now. Because I'm trying to reset my sleep schedule for Worlds. I have to wake up at, like, around 11:30 a.m. because the broadcast starts at 1 a.m. my time, I'm pretty sure. So I have to, like, I'm trying to reset my sleep schedule slowly but surely, and so I'm tired out of my mind right now. So I'm sorry, I apologize if I'm a little bit rambly in today's Spidz YouTube. I hope to see you watch it live, because I'll be on the casting desk. And if you like Spidz VOD reviews, almost invariably will you like seeing competitive LOR at the highest level. So, like, I'm not, I won't be as VOD reviewy during the cast, because I'll be trying to actually do casting live, and it's a little bit different to how VOD reviewers function. But make sure you watch it, right? It's the coolest event of the year, because it's the, like, I remember watching 2022 Worlds, and it was such a cool thing to watch. And I still remember, like, a lot of the plays. Like, I remember the finals, and I remember a lot of Donuts plays and all these sorts of things. This probably means less strenuous CDS prep. I've got a few things going on. I'll be slightly busy, so against FTP Bus, we're probably going to bring slightly more linear decks. Or does it? You know, we can't let FTP Bus be too secure in that. If you want to just support, like, some Spidz YouTube enjoyers, I recommend cheering on Nas and Donut. Both of them have been long-time supporters of Spidz YouTube. Donut's even been on Spidz YouTube before. You can also cheer on Hawk. I'm a big fan of Hawk. I think he's the player I third most want to win. There's a bunch of players that I'm really excited to watch in Worlds. There's probably like 10 or 15 Americas players and about like 7 European players and like 10 APAC players that I'm really excited to watch. It should be a fantastic time. Also, if you want to see more Spidz on YouTube, I was in the Creator Spotlight video for Mastering Runeterra, which was pretty funny. I know a lot of this is just me advertising, like, funny Spidz things, but it's so weird to have so many opportunities presented to me in the last couple of months. Like, at the start of the year, I had only casted one event. Like, before January, I'd only ever casted one event, which was the OS Invitational, the second OS Invitational. And since then, I've been given a lot more opportunities and some really exciting possibilities for doing things. And it's all very new to me and very exciting. So I just want to, like, put it on Spidz YouTube just because I think it's interesting to see. And I think another thing that's important is, like, you know, as a fan of LOR, as someone that just likes the game, right? Like, absent of, you know, Pog, it's me on the screen, you know, holy shit, me, Spidz. Like, one of the issues that LOR has is that there's not a lot of engagement in a lot of the product, right? Like, you know, there's no advertising for LOR. It's trying to get there through, like, word of mouth, right? Tournaments don't get that big of viewings, and, like, the bigger streamers like Snooey and Icado do have large viewer bases, but they're not, like, exorbitantly large, right? There are two ways of solving this. One is to, like, create more interesting content, like be creating stuff. And that's sort of what the CDS is for, right? Like, trying to create interesting content. Like, the reason there's 10 content-y people doing it is because they want content to be made artificially, right? But the other thing is, like, you don't just need to make things that are engaging. You need to have people be engaged by it. So by me advertising this, I'm hoping to at least, like, try and get people to be interested in things, right? Like, you know, may as well watch this advertisement video that Mastering Runeterra made because Pog, you know, more LOR engagement, right? That's at least kind of the way I see it. That's one of the reasons why I'm putting all this stuff here. And that's why I try and shout out Cephalopod YouTube a lot, as well as Sirturmund YouTube. By the way, these games are not as interesting from my perspective as they are from Sirturmund's perspective. And Sirturmund's the GOAT. I love Sirturmund. You can hear him do his, hey everybody, Sirturmund here again, if you want. And, you know, you can't get that from me. I actually do say it in the recording, but we're probably not going to go over the recording. I'm probably going to skim through. But, you know, I really... I wanted to advertise the Mastering Your Own Terror thing and the Worlds thing. I think you should also watch the Boulevard... I'm getting super rambly. I apologize. You should really watch the Boulevard Power Rankings as well as the Biotuck Power Rankings. I think if you don't know anything... The hell is that? If you don't know anything about... Okay, I'm a little bit scared. If you don't know anything about Worlds or the Worlds players, you should probably just watch the Boulevard Power Rankings and the Biotuck Power Rankings, in order to learn some things about the players. And I think there will also be things posted on Twitter relatively often about the players. So that's some also good content to consume. If you're not subscribed to Boulevard YouTube, you should be. He posts good tournament stuff that you should be watching. Finally, the last comment I want to make is that I got a direct message from someone asking if I was going to make a review on the new cards, right? I've done this once or twice in the past. I did it for the World Ender... Well, I did it for the Worlds cards, right? The Aatrox, Kale, and Rise cards. And I also did it for a few balance patches. But I kind of... I don't know. I kind of don't like those videos. At least I didn't enjoy making them. I thought they were... I just don't like how they come out. I think that, like... I understand the appeal of them, but when I interact with new cards, I don't think I do it in a very interesting way, right? Like, I think when Margin Bay or Snooey looks at the new cards, they're like, hell yeah, open quote, famous Ionia player, close quote, really like, you know, open bracket, new Ionia card, close bracket. And then Margin Bay will go to the Demacia card and say, this blocking Badger Bear, he really is blocking. And that's the whole thing. And we all get to go, haha, that's funny, the Ionia guy's saying the Ionia thing, right? And then you do the same for Snooey, and then you do the same for whoever else, right? But when I review the new cards, I sort of don't care what the cards are. The cards could have any text or no text, and I'd still enjoy them just the same. What interests me more about new cards is less so, like, am I going to enjoy playing them? And more so how they're going to impact the meta and how they're going to impact the way the game is seen for the next couple of weeks, right? I don't really care about, like, what the meta is. I don't care if it's an Ionia meta or a Demacia meta or whatever. Like, the metas that people hate, like a Azir Aurelia or Eve Zilani, to me, they were just as enjoyable as any other meta, right? Not because they were the decks I liked. I didn't play Azir Aurelia, and I didn't play Reaver's Row very much. Those decks don't really interest me. Like, I will always find a deck that I like eventually, even if it's some off-meta stuff. Like, I played Zivarakshan unendingly during metas that didn't have any other decks that interested me, right? Because I just like the game, and it doesn't really matter to me what the meta is like. I just like playing it, right? And so it means that when I'm reviewing the cards, that's not an axis I'm getting value from being interested in. So the other axes that you can be interested in when talking about like new patches are like, you know, are the themes cool? Does it impact your decks that you like a little bit? And like, yeah, I guess, but every expansion is going to do something like that. And me just sitting there being like, wow, that's cool, doesn't come across as interesting to me. I just feel like it would end up just being an hour of me saying like, yeah, that's cool. Yeah, that's cool. And then that's it. And I just didn't enjoy making those sort of videos. So I'm probably not going to do that. It sounds a bit weird because, like, if, you know, I got in the creator spotlight video, I'm clearly a content person, right? You would assume that the most obvious source for generating content, which is new cards, you can go like, oh, new cards, would be like the best place to go about it, but it just wasn't for me. And I just wanted to make that point because I think it's really interesting with how I interact with the game, right? I think there's something ideologically there that at least interests me, right? Learning about myself and what I find interesting about the game. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say. I know this was a lot of not CDS stuff. We'll go over the games now, but they are sort of blowouty. I don't really draw what I want, and because we don't fight Mill, the decks just look awful and flat because they're not good into things that aren't Mill, because my whole point was trying to beat Mill. Which was just a bet, right? At the end of the day, it's just a bet to try and hope that they're on Mill and not on Mill, right? If I was on linearly strong decks, I would have done slightly better, but if they had brought Mill and I was on linearly strong decks, I would have had to ban Mill, and I really didn't want to ban a deck that I thought they were going to bring, right? But I don't know. Look, that's what happened this week. We'll go over the games, but that's the intro done. Goodbye. See you when I do the review part. Hello, it's become tomorrow. Yesterday was yesterday. Now today's tomorrow from yesterday. This is a new day, and it's been about 5 days since I played these games, so hopefully the quality isn't too bad, but there might be a couple of things that I miss from my thought processes. But let's go through the games slowly. We banned the Endure deck, and they end up banning the Noxus Wildfire, which I thought was kind of like my worst deck. So in theory, I'm happy by it. Obviously, I've spoiled that we get 2-0'd, so it's not a big deal. But they ban that, and then I start with Kennen Gangplank because I wanted to play it, basically. This mulligan is really complicated because we're fighting TF Ezreal. Now, TF Ezreal, I pretty much wanted, like, 3 or 4 things, which is a lot of things to want in a matchup. I wanted a win con, right? So I wanted to have Elephant plus Deluge plus Lightning Rush, right? I wanted 2 out of 3 of those felt quite good for me, with Deluge probably being the least important of them. And then I also wanted a way of interacting with Twisted Fate, and I also wanted a way of interacting with the Landmark, right? There's a lot of things that I'm looking for. Now, Ebb is a way of dealing with Twisted Fate, but it's unreliable, and there's a lot of side grades to it, such as Contrologist, for example. So I think I would have wanted to cut Ebb. I think 2 Deluges is too many. They still play units that I do need to interact with, so having to deal with 2 Deluges is a lot of Deluges to deal with. And then Condense is only good once we already have the Elephant. Now, I don't know what I end up deciding to mulligan, but if it's like that, I'm happy. Do we hit okay?
And Tidal Wave to kill Twisted Fate. I think it's valuable. So I'm going to keep 1 Deluge.
Okay, cool. I think this is a perfectly cromulent mulligan. I'm happy to have seen this. Alright, let's continue. Oh, that's right. Every time I forget that the way I do this is by pressing the up and down keys. There we go. We end up drawing a lot of Lightning Rushes as well as Contrologist. We sort of have ways of winning the game if they don't pressure us down, right? All we needed to do is draw 1 Elephant, and then we will constantly be able to Lightning Rush the Nexus and be able to win the game. So all we need to do is find Elephant in this instance, as well as interact with their board, which is not an insignificant thing to be doing, right? They play Mayim, and I have... if you watch Sirturmund's gameplay of this, you will see that I spend a lot of time thinking about every single turn. And I could include the in-game commentary for it, but I'm not going to. But at the time, I was thinking whether I wanted to play Deluge on 3 or not. Or if it's better to play something like Contrologist or Mirai Warden in order to develop some blockers so that I don't take 2 damage from this lady here. This 2-3 will be on the board until it's no longer on the board. That sounds like an obvious sentence, but for it to no longer be on the board, I have to interact with it at some point. And my deck doesn't really deal with 2-3s very well. So my thinking was that if I'm going to try and interact with Mayim in some capacity, I'm probably going to have to block it with a 2-1 and then use some sort of interaction piece to get rid of it. Whether that is Tidal Wave, whether that is Ebb and Flow, whatever, right? Because using 2 pieces of a spell-based removal on this unit will not feel as good compared to using a unit to block and then do something, right? So with that in mind, over the course of the next, like, 6 or 7 turns, if I don't interact with this unit, it's going to be dealing like 6 or 8 damage to me, and they are a deck that can count to 20 against me, especially if they have Ezreal or Rex or a bunch of other things, right? Or even just the Mystic Shots. So I, at some point, have to deal with this 2-3. The fact that I'm struggling against this should be indication that this deck maybe isn't the best, but it was trying to beat Mill. So I am deciding here between Contrologist, Mirai Warden, or Deluge, and I'm pretty sure I end up picking a 2-drop in order to try and deal with this. We end up picking Contrologist, and these are our 3 options. 3 pretty enticing options for quite a couple of reasons. Cloud Stance is an interesting way of letting us reuse our Elephants as well as reuse our Contrologist, but against specifically this region combination, it doesn't really matter. If we pre-committed Cloud Stance, they're always going to be able to do some sort of interaction piece against Contrologist. And if we're trying to use Cloud Stance on something like an Elephant, we can always just do Lightning Rush on the Elephant, right? So getting the Cloud Stance on it doesn't seem as important, right? Scrap Heap is a great way of having a big blocker, especially for blocking into something like the 2-3 or even like Ezreal if we get Shadow Tech, Bleedwalker or whatever. Like even getting Professor Von Mech lets us develop some units. Getting like the 5-mana 6/6 is like, it's chunky, it'll deal some damage, which is not insignificant to care about. But I think I ended up clicking Yordle Portal, thinking that it's one of my better ways of dealing with stuff like Mayim in turn, right? Especially if they develop other things like Mayim. But One issue with the Auto Portal is that, like, it doesn't really deal well into their quick attack units, right? And none of these units do well into their quick attack units. I would have wanted something like a Pytos or a Group Shot in order to deal with things like Windborne Mariner or Exalted Cloudwinder. So this was maybe not the best selection, but not the worst selection. I think you can ignore Cloud Stance here, but I think Scrap Heap does have some good logical arguments for trying to prevent units like this from killing me. But Yordle Portal also makes sense as a way of blocking that at burst speed. The other thing is both of these cards say discard 1, and that is a little bit concerning considering none of this stuff I really want to be discarding, right? Getting a unit and losing Mirai Warden for a unit seems antithetical to my game plan. Getting rid of one of my few interaction pieces for their win con seems antithetical, and my own win cons removing them seems antithetical to my game plan. There's actually nothing I really want to discard, which makes a lot of these options very unappealing. We end up picking Yordle Portal, we'll go to the next turn. They play Ezreal. This is something that Roma did once as well, and them playing Ezreal on 3 kind of fucks me over, right? Again, this 3 health is a bit of an issue, and my deck wasn't built to deal with it. Now, I can deal 3 damage with Deluge plus Lightning Rush, but now that I've played Conchologist, I can't afford the Deluge anymore, which makes it a little bit more complicated. This turn is not an easy turn to work out. I can play something like Mirai Warden, but it gives them easy access to play things like Make It Rain on me and get not only a bunch of Ezreal procs, but get board value and tempo. So I don't really want to play into something like a Make It Rain that they run in their deck, but what else am I doing with this turn? Am I passing and wasting the mana, then doing Deluge, and then passing again to try and do Lightning Rush from Concho into, like, Ezreal? That is the least likely thing to ever occur successfully, right? Am I trying to play Yordle Portal so that I can try and get a positive block onto Mayim? That can sort of make sense, but then what am I discarding? Am I discarding Kennen? Am I discarding the Kennen, like, the spell? I can do a 3-mana Yordle Portal plus a Deluge over this turn and next turn, but that's still not putting me in a fantastic position. You'll notice that a lot of what I'm going to be saying in this game and the next game is that I am starting on the back foot just from the onset of my mulligans, and that feeling doesn't ever really go away. This is an inherent problem of the deck and the deck building when you're not fighting something that's like a favored matchup. But I think being able to recognize that feeling as not necessarily a feeling of the gameplay being poor, but the deck choices being poor is a great way to, like, figure out what type of lineups you want to be running in tournaments like these, right? It's sort of like a backwards way of viewing a VOD review, because you're not really... One of the issues with Spidz YouTube VOD reviews is that it only focuses on, typically only focuses on the actual game itself, right? Talking about lineup construction stuff I put in the intro bit, but at least when I was not doing CDS reviews and I was doing stuff like Aegis reviews and the reviews for the opens, or the seasonals when I used to do them, talking about the lineup construction it wasn't something that I did that big of a focus on, and that's not really where Spidz YouTube tries to do the VOD review on. But I think that, like, it's important to look at a game state like this and realize that this is also a problem of the deck, not just of my gameplay capacity, right? I mean, I might be making a misplay here and there, especially in some of these early turns. Like, you could argue that I'm just supposed to take the damage and go for Deluge and then try and find ways of, like, threatening double Lightning Rush on a future turn or something, but it's not really the best position I want to be in. Anyway. I end up not playing anything. I block with Conchologist, I pass, and then I play Deluge, thinking that this is my way to win. I want to just try and get these cards to pop off. No, sorry. I think I play Aloof. Right. I don't play Deluge because if they just develop units here, I don't have ways of killing their units, and I would really like to have something I can Lightning Rush off. And Aloof Traveler is not only a relatively good thing to Lightning Rush from, because it'll draw me cards and get rid of their strongest cards, it's also got 3 health, meaning that the only way for them to interact with it is Exalted Cloudwinder, right? That's what makes me pivot off from Deluge. I think it's tight which one you want to go for, especially because I can still afford Aloof Traveler's next turn if I do the Deluge this turn and the Lightning Rush, but I like the idea of being able to block with Aloof Traveler and Lightning Rush some sort of 2 health unit, whether that be a TF or something. One thing that this play also does, this play of Deluge, is that it prevents me from being able to kill Twisted Fate with something like a Lightning Rush or a what's it called? Electro Harping, right? So this does let me keep my mana up. However, this will always be a tempo negative play, and this is one of the least bad times to make a tempo negative play before they play Twisted Fate, right? So there's reasons to try and do Deluge, to try and see this as an opportunity for Deluge, but I feel like if I'm trying to win the game, I might need to play Aloof Traveler in order to sustain board and not lose on tempo against this deck, right? I play Aloof, let's quickly see what it discards.
I think Aloof is safer.
Sunken Temple. Right, one of the things I do during this game, it's something I spend a lot of time on the recording. When I was doing these games in scrims, what I was noticing is that I literally needed to count all the cards in their deck because I don't really have a quick timer. They will often have like 10 cards left in their deck by the time they win. So I had taken a screenshot of the deck list and then was marking off everything that was taken off. So when the Sunken Temple came off, I opened up my snipping tool and I crossed off Sunken Temple. That's part of the reason why, like, you can even see the timer now. I'm already 2 minutes slower than Sirturmund. It's turn 4. I feel a little bit bad. It is a tournament, so I don't feel like the worst about giving so much thought about every single action I could possibly doing, but I'm giving it my all trying to figure out what the best lines are here, as well as marking down everything. And if you want to take a tournament super seriously, I think this sort of stuff is the sort of stuff you need to do. You probably also need to, like, make sure you've got a good hand tracking system. If you want, you can, like, minimize LOR and then, like, write numbers above the cards and then say this one was made by contrologist or whatever and use, like, an arrow if you want. And that's one way of also doing hand tracking if you don't want to, like, just look and remember. But, like, there's a lot of things you could be doing to use your time that isn't just, like, looking at the board state, right? There's other things you can be doing with your time. And part of that was me crossing off the cards in the deck list just so I know that there's, like, one less Sunken Temple, right? And this one less Sunken Temple means that this, as well as Portal Pioneer, aren't going to be trying to hit landmarks as much, which means this card is more able to be able to hit Twisted Fate, right? They play Twisted Fate blue card. I think for a while, if I want to kill Twisted Fate with something like the Lightning Rush, probably... sorry, not the Lightning Rush. Well, I mean, I can use Lightning Rush, but I was thinking more so Electro Harpoon, whether I want to discard Cannon or discard one of these 2 cards, or maybe even one of these 2 cards, right? I haven't drawn amazingly in the last couple of turns. But I decided not to, saying that I can always Lightning Rush Twisted Fate. And I want to be doing Lightning Rush before I do something like Electro Harpoon, particularly so if I draw an elephant, Lightning Rush is already in the elephant pool. I don't have to spend time waiting before I can do Lightning Rush, right? And if I'm going to be getting back my Aloof Travelers, I'm going to be even sooner trying to find my elephant, right? They go in with just Ezreal. I don't really have an answer for this, so I just let it happen. I think for a while about what they could possibly do against a Lightning Rush here. And I decide that they can't do very much. If they want to do double Mystic Shot on the Aloof Traveler, I can do my second Lightning Rush and beat anything they've got. If they want to do Divine Whirlwind, it currently costs 5 mana, so I'm still able to do Lightning Rush. This is one of my safer opportunities to do Lightning Rush, so I decide that this is when I'm going to do it. I try and kill Twisted Fate. They end up doing Divine Whirlwind, so I go for the other Lightning Rush to try and kill the Twisted Fate. They end up not playing the Mystic Shot. And then I play a Leaf Traveler to try and find Elephant. Because if I find Elephant right now, I am not in the worst position, right? I get to play Elephant. I get to get my Deluges and my Lightning Rushes consistently. I'll be able to strike the Nexus or strike the Ezreals constantly until I am able to win the game. So I play Aloof. Unfortunately, I draw a Gangplank. This really hurts because when it's Nilla, it's so much better. They end up playing a second Twisted Fate. And I'm in a bit of an unfortunate position where I don't really have a great way of answering these cards. And the thing is, they have had 2 draws this turn. Their natural draw and their Twisted Fate blue card draw. Which means they're like twice as likely to have gotten Suit Up on this turn compared to a previous turn. Now, they can afford Suit Up no matter what. But the reason I bring up Suit Up is that if I want to go for Electro Harpoon, I really don't want to be blown out by a Suit Up. Especially because I have lost both of my Lightning Rushes that I had in hand. Which means I can't easily deal 2 damage if they go for Suit Up on the Twisted Fate. I end up spending a long time thinking about this, and I think I decide to do Cannon plus the Electro Harpoon anyway, saying that they could still just as likely get Suit Up on a future turn and maybe use a draw card to get it. So this is maybe my better opportunity to go for the kill on the Twisted Fate, but it's not an amazing opportunity. They end up blocking and playing Make It Rain, which hurts a lot. Make It Rain is 2 targets, gets them a positive trade on the Cannon, which they're going to probably get a lot of positive trades with the Make It Rain anyway, but it still hurts to see. And it also means that the Aloof Traveler died into the Mayim. But I don't have any other way of answering the Mayim, so it's sort of fine, I guess. I end up trying to kill the Twisted Fate and ends up being successful, so that's 2 Twisted Fates and a Sunken Temple down. I don't feel awful in this position, but it's a position where I really want Elephant sooner rather than later. They play Sunken Temple, which is fine by me, for I can destroy it with Portal Pioneer. And so I elect to do just that. And now we get into the tougher turns. Oh, sorry. I go for this. They Mystic Shot my unit. We now have Elephant. Why aren't I playing Elephant? Do I know that I've not played Deluge? Oh, sorry, me right now. I forget that I haven't played Deluge. My bad. I forgot that we played Aloof instead of Deluge. I think you can make a world in which it's okay to play Elephant right now, but hold on. That means I've lied to you for the past like couple of rounds, because I've said an Elephant top deck is fine. Was there any other opportunity to play Deluge besides the Aloof Traveler turn? That... Ooh, what about this turn? I think I could have played Deluge this turn. I was definitely scared of a Sunken Temple. But if they Sunken Temple, I can just kill Twisted Fate and then move on in future anyway. This is a turn where I could have played Deluge, right? So, like, the Elephant top deck that I said that I felt like I was in a fine position for in the last couple of minutes is wrong. For I don't have Deluge. Right? Deluge is a pretty important part of make me feel as if Elephant's a good enough win con, right? I think... Yeah, I think this would have been a better turn to play Deluge, setting up for a proper Elephant top deck in future, right? And since this deck is reliant on having an Elephant top deck as a win con, it's not just like I'm using resource-based analysis to try and figure out how to win. This is how I'm supposed to win anyway, right? I have to be playing for Elephant being drawn over the next 10 turns or something, right? I think... I know why I was so scared of Twisted Fate here. Like, if you give this deck a couple of turns, they can still level Twisted Fate even if they don't have Deluge. Even if they don't have Sunken Temple. It's a little bit hard because they might have to try and find something like Twisted Fate's Pick a card, but it's definitely possible. They obviously don't have the Nilla, so they don't have the Slipstreams, and I don't think they're on Vicrash, so they don't have those Slipstreams either. But they're able to play things like Exalted Cloudwinder and so forth to try and level up the Twisted Fate. I think this was an opportunity to play Deluge. I think... I don't think this was an opportunity to play Deluge. I can, you know... If they have, like, multiple units and I have to respond with Mirai Water and they have Make It Rain, I'd be in a really bad position. So I couldn't have played Deluge this turn, I think. I think that would have been an easy way of losing the game. And I couldn't afford Deluge this turn. I needed to take out the landmark ASAP. One reason that... So, this is a debate that I had within myself during the scrims with Roma. Where... There were times where I had the ability to kill the landmark, but I decided not to because it cost me a lot of mana. Right? Right now, killing the landmark is costing me 3 mana, but, like, it's preventing me from playing Deluge, right? Which is really important. Sunken Temple staying on their field is pretty bad. Its first proc is the best proc for Sunken Temple every single time. Because it resets their hand and gets rid of clunky cards into better cards, right? Throughout the last 7 turns or so, they have played every card that they have wanted to play the most, which means the cards in their hand are inherently cards that were less good than the cards that they ended up playing, right? That means, as it currently stands, the cards in their hand are a worse standard deviation of cards, or a worse subset of cards, than all of their cards in their deck, including their hand, if they drew another hand randomly, right? So, you know, they had opportunity, if they wanted to play Exalted Cloudwinder, right? But that card's not very good in their hand right now, until like next turn, right? While if they get to reset their hand, they're going to be able to find that card as well as a bunch of other cards that they want. They're going to want to find another Twisted Fate. Right now, their hand doesn't have a Twisted Fate in it because they've already played those Twisted Fates. They already had a good time with it. But if they had that third Twisted Fate, they probably would have played it by now, right? In this matchup, that theory might be less explicit. But if you're thinking about something like Seraphine Set, for example, that deck runs a bunch of, like, one-ofs. And, like, they will find opportunity to play some of those one-ofs at some point. But sometimes they're going to have 3 or 4 cards that are bricks in the matchup, like Deny or Nopify in certain matchups, right? Or, like, Rocket Barrage in certain matchups. That first proc of Sunken Temple reduces or improves their hand quality, generally speaking. Like, you know, if you do it 100 times... If you do the first proc 100 times, it will result in a better hand quality in general. The second and third time doesn't really matter as much because that logic of the hand quality being reliant on the cards they have already played is less relevant, right? But denying the first proc of Sunken Temple means that I am able to say that these 4 cards are still of a lower quality than their other cards, for they weren't able to play them before. Another reason to deny it is that it, like, turns off Exalted Cloudwinder, and it turns off, you know, Ruined Rex. And Exalted Cloudwinder is the kind of card that cycles on itself, so preventing the first proc of that obviously prevents the future procs of that. And same with stuff like Ruined Rex, right? You want to be able to prevent that ASAP. So I don't think this was a Deluge turn, but keep in mind that, like, you can argue that I don't have to target the landmark as egregiously as I was going for if you disagree with my logic about the hand state quality being a cognizant factor, right? Anyway, I definitely should have played Deluge on the turn where I do the double Lightning Rush. I think that's clear to me now, which is cool. It's cool for me to know that. I didn't think I played this game too poorly. I thought I played these games pretty well. It's just the draws were a little bit awkward, and the draws were awkward not because I was favored and I should have won. The draws were awkward because I built my deck to have awkward draws, right? It's my fault that the draws were awkward, not, like, RNG's fault, right? But now getting this elephant. Oh my god, how far did we go? I decide to not play the elephant because the only thing we'll get off of it is a Lightning Rush, so I want to play Deluge so that I can set up the elephant to actually be dealing damage, right? If I just cycle elephant without playing Deluge, I am putting them on a 9-turn clock that costs 7 mana every turn. Not the best clock I've heard of in Legends of Runeterra, but if I play Deluge, I'm putting them on a 4 + 5 + 6. I'm putting them on a 4-turn clock that can also take out any major threat and also can just stick in my hand whenever I want to, right? While with something like 2-mana Lightning Rush, or 2-damage Lightning Rush, that's not as prominent, right? So I play Deluge this turn to try and set up that win con, and I've taken out a lot of their resources, so setting up this Deluge is a good thing. Now, we are going to see a misplay that I do chide myself for a lot, and it's one of the main reasons I decided to actually do this VOD review. There was a good chance I was going to skip doing the VOD review section because I'm rather busy and it's not the most interesting games, but this decision, I think, is really, really interesting. They play Exalted Cloudwinder. They're about to draw 3 cards, 2 from Cloudwinder, 1 from the normal deck, and they're about to deal 3 damage to me. I have to start deciding what my lose conditions are and what my win conditions are. My win condition right now is to cycle Elephant, right? Takes about 4 turns and isn't not susceptible to things. Spamming Elephant means that if they play Ruined Rex right after I play Elephant, Ezreal is going to level up, right? And Ezreal leveled up is a threat to me. I am able to kill Ezreal with a Lightning Rush, but that is a lot of damage coming in. They will have a 4/4 on the board, as well as this 2/2, as well as a bunch of other units they're going to spew out. And if they don't have units in hand, they've got spells in hand that are going to try and deal with the board rather effectively, right? I want to be able to play Elephant and try and contest the board. But if they do have the Ruined Rex, I'm sort of going to lose. Likely. Not guaranteedly, but the Ruined Rex does help them a lot. The thing is, I can't control whether they have Ruined Rex or not. I could have if I let the temple stay around, but I don't have control over that. But it, you know, there's a weird sense in which you could write an angry comment saying, no, Spidz, you could have prevented them from having Ruined Rex by not destroying the landmark. What I decide to do here is think that, okay, one of my lose conditions is that if they don't have Riptide Rex, I'm accepting 5 damage this upcoming turn because I'm not playing Mirai Warden. When if I play something like Mirai Warden or Gangplank, I'm able to block the 2/2 and prevent 2 damage, right? One way of putting this dilemma is, right, like, this is Sirturmund, right? If Rex and no Rex, right? And then this is GP / Mirai Warden, and this is no GP / Mirai Warden, right? If they've got Rex, I lose, no matter what happens. Because if I'm playing Elephant and they kill Elephant with Rex, I lose. If they don't have Rex and I don't play GP, I am, like, in bad position, but not the worst position, right? But if I play GP and they don't have a Rex, I am in a better position, right? So my thinking was that I should play GP or Mirai Warden. Now, this is very black and white because in theory, these aren't full losses. There are ways I can outplay Ruined Rex. They're just extremely, extremely intricate and tight. And the thing is, you're probably allowed to say that they've got a Ruined Rex in hand with how they've played. They haven't played Exalted Cloudwinder for 5 mana despite the capacity to in the last couple of turns. They haven't played a lot of their other, like, just units that they could have played to deal damage. I don't really do well into Windborn Mariner, and they're going to be playing Windborn Mariner into Tidal Wave anyway, so doing it earlier or later doesn't really matter. If you're tracking their hand, you're probably realizing that the only cards they can have are either awkward spells, such as Divine Whirlwind and Make It Rain, or their Ruined Rex. No matter what, that's leveling up Ezreal, and it's going to be able to deal with my board rather effectively, especially Make It Rain into stuff like Mirai Ward and Gangplank. But it's tough to decide whether I'm able to beat Rex or not. This is a tough decision. I think about it a lot. I end up playing the Gangplank thinking that I sort of needed it as a blocker and I wanted to maybe threaten Parley if I could. They end up doing this and getting Ezreal one away from leveling up, and I lose, right? I lose. I don't instantly lose, but they deal a bunch of damage, which was the whole point of playing Gangplank, to avoid that damage. Instead, they go in on the damage. I end up passing to try and burn their Mystic Shot. I think Ezreal is at 7 of 8 right now, so I really don't want them to Mystic Shot Elephant. I'm trying to bait them into Mystic Shotting the Nexus and then playing Elephant right after. They play Exalted Cloudwinder, and then I pass one more time for them to Mystic Shot. I play Elephant. They level Ezreal with, I don't even know what spell.
Rails, I am like mega dead. Yeah.
Howling Gale.
Shit, have they played enough spells this time? 4.
Okay, they've played 4 spells this turn. Thank you. Very, very squeaky Spidz. I decide to play Lightning... Oh, this timing is weird. Apparently, I decide to play Lightning Rush after combat. They don't have any mana that they can spend on spells, so it doesn't matter. And I kill Ezreal. And this is not... It's not a great position, but it's not the worst position I've ever been in. I play Elephant. They play Vikrash. I was wrong there on Vikrash. I play Deluge again. They play Red Card, which hurts into my Conchologist. I decide that I think I'm going to play... I've got two... Okay, I got a few options here. Let's take this slower. Let's go into a more favorable position. Okay. I've got a few options. On their open, right now, I am dying if I do nothing. This deals 7 damage. I've got 7 health. 7 minus 7 equals 0. That's lethal. This is not the number you want in Legends of Runeterra. I do have some answers, right? I've currently got Wallop and Lightning Rush. I can deal with 2 of their units and go down to 4 as opposed to 7. But I can do more than that. I can also do Condense on, well, any unit I want, but mainly Elephant to try and find more Deluges and Lightning Rushes. That allows me to block 2 more damage, and it's something I can only do now. I can't do next turn, because both of these cards are fast speed. I can do them next turn. I also have the capacity to do Electro Harpoon, take out something like a Twisted Fate or a Tutu. This is the same thing as doing a Condense. I should also mention, I still have this card from earlier that I'm able to play. So I've got a few options available to me. As you saw when I was skimming through, I do end up picking the Condense line to try and go for more Lightning Rushes and try and find win cons that I'm able to try and play for. Trying to reason that I need to still put them on some sort of clock, and that involves getting excess Deluges sooner rather than later, right? I think it's arguable. I think there's good reason to do this over here instead, especially if I want to deal with a few things. But I also want to make sure I'm not losing to form up. In theory, I'd like to make it such that I can answer a form up with the second Lightning Rush I get in hand from the other Elephant. But they might not have suit up. Suit up, because they probably would have found an opportunity to play suit up earlier against my removal. Anyway, we go for the Deluge thing. They end up attacking. We end up drawing Ebb, which is really nice. I end up discarding one of the Lightning Rushes, apparently, and going in for this. End up dealing with the board quite favorably. I also discard something with the spell, but I'm not actually going to let my audio play out here, because I think... oh, sorry, that's the wrong direction. They have Ezreal and they win the game, by the way. You know this. They 2-0. I want to let my audio play out here because there's a few things that are on my mind, and I also want to release it to myself and see how I think about it. Let's go to around here.
Yeah, I think the lack of title invocation is a big one. Deluge, Lightning Rush. There's Ebb, finally. Mm-hmm. If they drew another temple, I'm probably dead by playing like this. And they had the other Ezreal. Okay. Yeah, if I didn't play Wallop, I think I may have had a chance, but that should be game. Yeah, I misplayed, but this is a matchup that I did a few times with Roamer and knew that I would probably lose if I found it in real. Like, I just don't have an answer for the card Ezreal, or the card Riptide. So what's it called? Ruined Rex. Yeah. And this is a smart way of playing it. Mm-hmm. I definitely need a title in the game, but that's the problem with this deck. Like, you need so many of your cards to come in the right order. Right? If I had Tidal Invocation, I'd find it easier to kill these units without having to use Lightning Rush to do so. Oh, look, Tidal Wave. It's like a few turns too late, but I'll still play it. Do they have the burn? They probably have the burn. It's Israel TF. They've almost certainly got the burn. Mm-hmm. That's my bad. Should have brought a better deck.
Okay, I thought I talked about it. Apparently, I just thought it. So you know what? My bad. What I was thinking about here was that I spent a lot of mana dealing with this board, right? I go into this turn with 10 mana. I spend 3 on Wallop. I spend 3 on creating Bomber Twins. And I spend 2 on dealing with this. I think I should probably have not played Wallop so that I am able to play Lightning Rush in order to either kill an Ezreal, or more importantly, just be able to hold up mana for interacting with things in general. Like interacting with a suit up, for example, or interacting with, trying to get my elephant back, right? I think that's just like a minor misplay. I was very much playing not to lose here as opposed to playing to win. But my playing not to lose is spending 2 mana to, like, spending 3 mana to prevent 2 damage, which is just not worth it in the game state that we're in at the moment. That's my bad. That's all I wanted to comment on there. I thought I had a comment on it and put it well in the recording, but apparently I just didn't talk about it. But you also saw the ending of the game. Not a lot I could have or should have done. We'll go into the next game. If we want to give like a very quick like feedback on this game, it's the same thing I've talked about throughout like a large portion of this video, which is that I brought decks that were not trying to beat these decks, and the deck building looks awkward when it's not, when I assume a more insular meta than it is, right? Alright, now we're fighting Tree, and... Okay, our mulligan is to get rid of Tidal Wave and Stress Defense and go into Wise and Helmsman and Conchologist. Helmsman is a must-keep. I have to keep it. It's my win con. I need the card in my deck. Stress Defense doesn't hit anything except Vladimir, But I don't think I'm allowed to keep it in my opening hand because I need to find Deluge, I need to find Lightning Rush ASAP. Concho is really nice for early blockers against things like Grumble Slug, for example. I mean, it doesn't actually trade into it, but it's nice to have something. And it can look for things like Pytos. One specific thing about Tidal Wave that I also want to be wary of is that I don't want to level up Vladimir. Leveling up Vladimir is a very easy way for me to die. If I can get them to play Vladimir without him being leveled, I am in such a better position, right? That basically buys me 2 turns, and it buys me 2 turns per level up progress that Vladimir is not, right? If Vladimir's 3 out of 5, I've got 2 more turns. Or 4 more turns if you include both of our attack turn cycles. So it's very bad to play Tidal Wave into something like a Grumble Slug and a Mare, even though you want the Crashing Wave in your deck so you've got bigger things going on. Because that's 2 procs for Vladimir, and he's only got 5 procs, and he can also proc himself when he's played in order to try and kill you, right? That happens when Sirturmund plays him, and he plays Vladimir really, really well in this game. I should say, Sirturmund plays quite well. And if you look at all the minor intricacies as well as the major broad plays that he does, all of it is stellar, right? Sirturmund plays these really, really well. No shade to Sirturmund, he's the GOAT. Alright, we do get Deluge, which is quite nice. We also find a way to answer Tree. They play Grumble Slug. I play Contrologist, thinking that I want to be able to block the Grumble Slug, forgetting that I don't really want to level up the unit. I think I should have just passed and played Deluge here. That's a misplay to get Quicken. I mean, Quicken's probably the right play. What are the options? Quicken, Heroic Refrain, Bloodbait. Ignore Bloodbait. We're not taking that. Heroic Refrain is actually maybe better. I think now I'm so much more used to and comfortable with talking about using Heroic Refrain as a way of sort of beating Vladimir and preventing us from trading poorly into him. But I don't think I fully conceptualized what this meant in actionable ways, only what this meant in, ideological ways, right? Ideologically, I knew I didn't want to level up Vladimir, and I knew that Quicken is a great way of recalling something and preventing 3 damage on my Nexus, right? I saw Quicken right here as, prevent 2 to 3 damage. And that's great. That's a great Contrologist pull. If you Contrologist into Health Potion every time, you'd feel pretty happy about that, right? It's even a Health Potion that makes them spend mana. But I should have probably taken Heroic Refrain, reasoning that it's one of my better ways of making sure Vladimir doesn't level up and also dealing with their board. Now, dealing with the Bandle Tree's board is sort of less relevant than it seems because they just spam out units a la the Poro King. Or rather, Poro King is a la Bandle Tree, but whatever. But I think Heroic Refrain still makes a lot of sense for being also able to attempt to threaten things like Vladimir when he's leveled up, because I don't have any 6-strength blockers, for example. So I think Heroic Refrain was maybe a slightly better option, but I went for Quicken. They end up playing Tree. This is the moment where I learned Tree costs 3 mana.
Sure, I'll pass. They've got mana. This card costs 3 mana? I didn't know that. I'm gonna be honest with you. I fought Roma so many times, and I only ever saw him play it on 4. This is news to me.
Okay, I sound like an evil gremlin with my laugh there when it sped up. Holy hell. I kill the landmark because I don't want them to get random cards. What if they draw Artican? Whoops, I died. You could argue that it's a bad tempo play to make, but honestly, I'm not really spending my mana on too much else. I'm either playing Deluge or Aloof this turn. It doesn't really matter which. Well, I mean, it does matter which, but it doesn't matter that I'm not allowing myself to do Cannon plus Deluge, for example. That's pretty fine. I decide to play Aloof. There's a few reasons why I decide to play Aloof. 1, I really want to get rid of Vladimir. Vladimir has to go. Get Vladimir out of here. Holy shit, that rhymed! Next time there's a protest against Vladimir, I'm going to make sure I use that as the chant. The other thing I wanted to get rid of is that there was one game where Roma absolutely fucked me with getting the... Is it called Pippi? What's it called? The, 6 mana 5/5 scout. When I attack, buff the health of all allies that have less health than me by +1 health. Right? It's a poppy support card. It has cute voice lines with Yordle Ranger. If they picked that or something like Shark Trainer, I wanted to get rid of it. And I'm able to delay my Deluge a little bit because this game is in theory going to try and go long. And so I can always play Deluge on turn 5 or turn 6 before I inevitably try and do my Elephant. So I do this. What do I end up? I think I discard Minity, right? Yeah, I discard Minimorph, which is, it's one of the worst things to discard because they're not going to get anything out of it outside of denying elephants, right? They play their Grumble Slug. I block, and then I regret it immediately, I'm pretty sure.
Sure, pass. I will block like this. That's fine by me. I'm turning on their... Vladimir! Vladimir! Spidz, Vladimir. Vladimir Spidz. You should have taken the damage. There's Vladimir in their deck. Okay.
Yeah, so you know all that stuff I was talking about how I scrimmed into this deck and made sure I try not to level Vladimir? You know how I spent this whole video talking about how not to level Vladimir? It's so hard to beat muscle memory, man. It's so hard to beat, like the sort of general play patterns that you subscribe yourself into because you played a lot of LoR and you find shortcuts in how to play the video game, right? I'm pretty sure every player has found this, right? They know how to play general things, so they just play generally, and right, if you're playing your Bandle City control deck, you're going to chump these units so your pings can kill them, right? That's how Bandle City control works. And this is just the one instance where it's not true because it's the one time you're fighting a Vladimir deck, and it's not a play pattern I'm used to. Obviously, that's like when I'm justifying this, there's a difference between like justifying with like justifying to absolve guilt and justifying to explain, right? When I try and justify things, I'm typically just explaining. I'm not saying like, you know, this was a fine play because of how I normally play the game. That's not true. This was a misplay, staunch misplay, but I think it's important to analyze and realize that this is just a consequence of like falling back into like regular play patterns that you're used to, right? And this happens with everyone when they play the game Legends of Runeterra. There is going to be so many instances where this happens to people. But this is also like why I'm not a great tournament player. Like these are exactly the sort of play pattern decisions that I need to be thinking of constantly and just being more aware of when I'm playing the video game, because I'm just not at the moment and haven't been for the last couple of weeks. I was, I think, doing slightly better a few months ago and definitely a year ago, but these are some issues that I'm having regarding modern LoR, and that happens, right? It's something I definitely want to work on, and I think I hopefully can try and work on that a little bit more in the coming up seasons for LoR. Anyway, I block. I give them 2 level up progress on Vladimir and 2 level up progress on Vladimir before Vladimir is played basically as a level Vladimir, because they'll just level him up by hitting their own units. We play Deluge here because they're not going to do anything else. They play Flock. And then they play all of these cards. Their attacks look great. And then they get Arena Mecha Caster from their other Bandle City mare. And I remember not liking this.
Lightning Rush is a very, very valuable asset. Fucking Mecha Caster, of course.
Yeah. So I was a little bit of an upsetty spaghetti at this one for sure. And at this point, I have to, 1, kill this card ASAP. 2, forget about not leveling up Vladimir, because to kill this guy, I am going to have to play around a couple things really awkwardly. I'm not in a great position. Now, I've got a lot of plays I can possibly do here. So many plays that I could be conceivably doing. I could Tidal Wave to try and kill this guy, right? I could Quicken to try to remove any of these units except the Mecha Caster. Sorry, my mouse went a little bit further. I can play Kennen to try and go for Kennen's Lightning Rush, and then combine that with the Mark of the Storms in order to try and kill any of these units, or Lightning Rush plus Mark of the Storm to kill Mecha Caster. I can play Gangplank. They're going to pull the keg to the side with Mecha Caster probably, but it means that Gangplank is going to be blocking one of these and doing a trade. I've got quite a few options ahead of me. I also want to make it such that over the next 2 turns, like after this one, I'm able to try and set up things like the elephant. Now, playing Kennen's Lightning Rush, I'm pretty sure, allows Lightning Rush to appear from the elephant pool. So the most appealing one to me is to go for Kennen plus Kennen's Lightning Rush, plus a double mark, try and deal with this Arena Mecha Caster, try and go down to maybe about 10 or 8 health, hope they don't have Arena Mecha Caster on the field, have George on the field, try and stabilize the board from there. If they don't have a Vladimir, we're still in a pretty good position. So that's what I decided to do. I decided to go for Kennen. I spent a long time lining up these attacks. I'm going to let the audio play out so you can think about how my thoughts go. All I'm going to mention is that there should be something on your mind. If you've been a diligent viewer, there should be something on your mind during all of this that I don't think about. There's like a little test for yourself.
I mean, I still can't see me winning, but, you know, I can pretend to, right? Okay, here's hoping they don't have Kai Class. I could do Quicken. I don't know if I'm allowed to do Quicken. I feel like... I mean, I'm probably supposed to do Quicken.
one thing I should mention, this is not the special thing, although if you notice this, good job picking it up. They probably don't have Pytos or Pokestick in hand because they let this controller just stay alive for so long. Their deck is the sort of deck that doesn't really have anything else they want to Pytos outside of these 1 health units, and setting up a larger attack before combat is an amazing thing to do. So you can probably do a read that they don't have Pytos or Pokestick, although they could have kept it around to try and beat Lightning Rush if they really wanted to. So that's one of the things I could have pointed out, but there's another thing to keep in mind that I'm not going to tell you about until it happens, because I think I missed it, and I don't feel bad about missing it, but if some of you see it and I don't, it's going to be a little bit sad.
I could do the play where you self-quicken, and then when they interact with this, then you do Lightning Rush. But I feel like surely that can't be right. Yeah, I'm supposed to just do Lightning Rush. No Pytos. They don't have Pytos or Pokey in hand. It's kind of useful to know until you realize that I'm dead anyway. Mm-hmm. Huh. Yeah, that's how I become the Joker, actually. I become the Joker when people do plays like this. I could have thought about that ahead of time. Like, that's definitely on me. That's something I could have thought of ahead of time. Okay, I play him.
Alright, that was a play that was not in my mind at all. I'm going to be honest, I saw this Octo Adventurer, and I always... So, I think most people's priority sequence looks like this. You know, the level 1 choice is to take heal, right? And then all 3 other options are, like, if equip, right? And this is not how coding should work. Coding should really work, like, you know... It probably, in most people's mind, it probably looks like, you know, if landmark, you know, take landmark destruction, else, then you have another if, you know, if weapons take weapon removal, if keywords take keyword removal, if no keywords, if none of this, you know, the final bit of this else chain is like the heal, right? For me, I actually put the keyword as the main one and healing as the second main one. So when I saw this adventurer, I just assumed keywords. That's stupid, right? Like, this is just another instance of me being dumb. They definitely should fucking heal. Now, you might ask, Spidz, nonetheless, whether you assumed not heal and you weren't thinking about that, surely you should have still played the double Lightning Rush, right? Sorry, it's still the double Mark of the Storm. Like, what value are you getting out of separating these Mark of the Storms? I never played Ari Kennen. Oh, sorry. I played like 10 games of Ari Kennen before Go Hard was the main version, because I saw, what am I playing the Go Hard version? I'm like, holy shit, Go Hard's one of my favorite cards. I want to play the Go Hard version. And it didn't compute in my brain. I couldn't play that deck. But I was really interested in it. It was a really interesting looking deck. I just couldn't comprehend it. So I watched a lot of Margin Bay play it. And Margin Bay had this thing about like constantly doing 1 Mark of the Storm at the time. Now, the logic for that is pretty sound when you're trying to play around things like Glimpse Beyond, right? If you do 1 mark, if you've got like 3 marks in hand, right? You do 1 mark, then you do the other mark on a separate action. If they go for Glimpse, you've got the 3rd mark and you're feeling happy, right? It allows you to go through Glimpse Beyond while having 3 marks, because if you do both and then they do Glimpse Beyond, you can't re-interact with it, right? So in my mind, the correct way to play Kennen, like this rule that I've set in myself that I've never ever changed because I've never played a lot of Kennen, is you always separate your Mark of the Storms. And this is obviously the instance where you don't. When there's focus speed healing on units, you don't do it, right? I'd never seen this gameplay pattern before. I hadn't messed around with it. Will I learn in future? Ideally, yes. In reality, I will forget because I still see Octo Adventurer as Quicksand. But yeah, that's a big misplay. And in the comments of the Sirturmund video, there was a person who was like, Spidz spends all this time thinking, but doesn't even play around the healing card, which, like, very true. For the amount of effort I'm putting into this game, I'm not actually thinking about the actual parts that matter. But yeah. This game would look very different if I did do the Mark of the Storms, but, like, in some sense, I sort of deserve to not have one if I'm going to be playing like this, with these decks that I brought that weren't targeting proper things and not playing properly, right? I still end up trying to hit the Mecha Caster, reasoning that I still want to be able to kill it. I end up playing Tidal Wave here. Can I figure out why I do this? Right. Okay. No. I think I can figure it out without going to the audio. So let me find a good
electro
time.
harpooning this guy. That might be a better line.
Okay. So if I don't kill Arena Mecha Caster before their next attack token, I am taking 1 billion damage. But let's say I decide to use Elephant as my method of killing Arena Mecha Caster. I have to recall one of my units in order to do that. It will inevitably be a 5v1, right? Probably against Kennen, because I'm probably trying to get the Elephant back. A 5v1 is a great way for my Nexus to go down to 0, especially because they're going to replay another unit anyway. Their whole deck is units, right? They're going to be able to play another unit. And while I'm not dead on that, I can't really justify taking that many attacks, because I'm not going to be able to win before their next attack token. Which means they're going to get 2 instances of damage in. Which means that I need to actually whittle this board down effectively. And my reasoning is that the best way of doing that is by playing Tidal Wave, hoping to hit this and hit this. If I don't end up hitting that, that's okay. I still have the Electro Harpoon and the Zap Spray Fin that you see me top deck, right? So the best way of staying alive and not losing this game, despite Elephant being necessary to win the game, Elephant is a losing line while playing this as a possibly winning line. That is why I go for the Tidal Wave. Ends up hitting quite well. Unfortunately, it gets their Vladimir to 4 out of 5. Oh, no, it does enough damage. It gets their Vladimir to 3 out of 5. No, it should be 4 out of 5. I remember it being 4 out of 5. I don't know why. But they play 4 out of 5 Vladimir, and they target 2 things. And you might think targeting 2 things is superfluous because Kennen dies anyway and Vladimir levels up anyway. But if I interacted with this card, they would have been able to still level up Vladimir by hitting up one of their other units. So this was a really good play, right? Vladimir, I'm almost certain it's 4 out of 5. I just don't remember where the last bit of damage came from. Oh, no, it was from the other Mark of the... Oh, was it from, yeah, it would have been from the Mark of the Storms. Yeah, no, that's where the 4th bit of damage came from. It came from the 2 blocks that were stupid. It came from one of the Mark of the Storms and the Conchologist block, right? On those last 2 being from... Or the non-blocks, the most recent 2 being from... on the Arena Mecha Caster, right? If I had Kennen's Lightning Rush here and they only targeted one of these units, I would have been able to prevent... Vladimir from leveling up, right? So this was a really good play by them. I think Sirturmund played absolutely amazingly. This levels up Vladimir, and now I am in the biggest pickle ever invented. My thinking right now is that they're going to be dealing 4 damage from these units. I have to block this somehow. That's non-negotiable. And let's say I do manage to block this, either from something I get from Zap Sprayfin, or push comes to shove from Heroic Refrain off Bandle Tellstone. I'm still going to be taking 3 damage from this, that equals 7, and then 2 damage from this, that equals 9, right? So not only do I have to find a way to block Vladimir, I also have to find a way of interacting with any of these units in order to survive. Now, I do have Quicken, which can defend me, but I do play Zap Sprayfin as opposed to something like Gangplank to try and find something like a Crashing Wave, right? I play Zap Sprayfin and we end up getting Condense, which isn't great because I have 3 mana and I can't play whatever I get off Condense, so it's not worth playing right now. They end up playing Bouncer and Bolt from a Scrap Heap. Getting rid of Disintegrate. Bouncer and Bolt's pretty good. It makes the math even more in their favor, but all they need to do is interact with 1 more unit and I'm okay, right? With how the math works out, they're adding 1 more unit that I need to interact with, fine, as well as 1 more damage from the Vladimir, fine, but I was already about 2 over anyway, so I should be fine as long as I draw another way of interacting with units. I will leave this audio bit in, because I think there's an interesting bit here, and I don't remember the exact bit of logic I used, so let's quickly listen to this.
Of course. Of course you got this, Sirturmund. Why would you get anything else? I don't think I'm technically dead. If I want, I can use Quicken on Bouncer and Bolt. And next turn, I can't afford Helmsman plus Tellstones, but I can probably afford Gangplank. I think I'm not dead. I'm trying to figure out how to survive at best. Well, we can... No, we can't. Well, we can attack. We probably should attack, right? Unless I have Flock. How am I surviving next turn? I can recall Bouncer and Bolt to make my open attack ever so slightly better. Okay, they're in a Flock. I want to use this to block Vladimir, or if they develop, I can play Gangplank plus Helmsman, right? This is how I'm blocking Vladimir. To do that, I will need to Quicken Bouncer and Bolt. So I think the line is to Quicken Bouncer and Bolt.
Okay, there are 2 things here. 1, I don't want to attack with Zap Sprayfin in case they've got Flock. Because they can block with this and then Flock, and then this unit is no longer blocking something like this. And this is only dealing 1 damage while all these units are dealing 2, so Zap Sprayfin's always blocking more, provided they don't have Flock. Provided they don't have... Provided this unit stays around, right? If they have Flock, then the unit will stay around, which means it's blocking less damage, right? Alternatively, you can see it as 2 free damage and trying to bait them into something. And also, if they block with this and they don't have Flock, it means they're just minusing 1 health, right? So they're not going to block unless they've got Flock. I decided to Quicken on this. Quicken does 2 things. 1, it either begets them to do an open attack that is less good, or if they develop, I get to play Helmsman, which allows me to develop 2 units in 1 action, allows me to block, you know, whatever I want, as well as Lightning Rush something and hopefully try and survive. There is a little bit of concern here in saying that, like, if I play Helmsman and they just replay Bouncer and Bolt as their develop, it means that I actually can't block Vladimir and I will end up losing. So I probably am not able to do Helmsman. I'm probably end up playing Gangplank just so I can play the Heroic Refrain, which means that you could argue that I'm not supposed to play Quicken here just because it sort of stuffs things up. But I also need to make sure that, like, I'm not dead to the open attack, and the only way I'm surviving the open attack right now is if I draw like the thing I mulliganed away, stress defense, right? So this is sort of necessary, but not fantastic. They end up open attacking. I draw Ebb, but it's not enough. I end up doing this as my block. Oh, that's right. They end up doing the self mini-morph again. I will say, you know, I've been congratulating Sirturmund on a lot of plays. This is not one of the ones I'd overly congratulate on him. I think, you know, it's been 2 years. We've seen a lot of self mini-morphs. It's a very cool play, but this, I think, is rather obvious to a lot of people nowadays, but it's still very cool to see. But it does mean that, like, something that I was, in theory, surviving, they drew their second mini-morph and were able to win the game off of it, which is fine, but, like, it should be noted that, like, it's not just Minimorph that wins them the game here. Like, Vladimir's Transfusion also wins them the game, as well as I'm not really hitting them on that much of a clock. Right? Ebb and Flow would have healed me a non-insignificant amount, especially with this Helmsman. Like, there are worlds in which I'm able to survive over the next couple of turns, but it's not a great chance. I do have Condense, so, like, I am getting a lot of elephants and going to be able to deal with a lot of things, but not amazingly. Anyway, they self-Minimorph. That's the game. Sirturmund, the GOAT, beats me. Happens sometimes. The games were tight, but they were tight in the way that, like, it was very flat how well they were doing, and what I was doing was just flatly worse than it, right? It's tight in the sense that this is not that big of a difference, as opposed to tight games where it's, like, 2 bars that look like this, and we're in, like, this little nook here, right? It's just flat in a... It's tight but flat, and it makes it uninteresting, in my opinion, to watch. Because at the end of the day, what have we seen? I didn't have a good deck that it wasn't able to draw its cards, and it ended up not working out for me. But that's that. I hope you enjoyed nonetheless. I hope there was something you could get out of this Spidz YouTube VOD review. That's all. I'll see you next week for when we fight FTP Bust. Bye. So the other axes that you can be interested in when talking about like new patches are, like, you know, does it look cool? Like, is the art cool? And, like, yeah, Morgana's art is cool as hell. I want someone like that to shackle me up. Absolutely. Right? Why did I say that? All right. The games are in about 2 minutes, but I just want to fangirl over Sirturmund. Holy shit. I'm so excited to fight Sirturmund. He is, like, my favorite person out of everyone that we're fighting against in the CDS. We just had a small chat here about what we brought. What's up? The elephant decks aren't great. Oh, I can't wait to watch Sirturmund's video. Hey everybody, Sirturmund here, back again with another CDS video. God, I love Sirturmund.